entertain a motion to approve the minutes from May 22nd. If anyone has any comments or corrections, please make them. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I do have a couple.
Okay.
May I suggest in the future, Hank, can we number minutes, pages on minutes at all to help with this process?
I can absolutely have
That's a
her do
good
that.
idea.
So what would be on the second page, towards the bottom?
Okay,
Jill's comments, I think there's a spelling of this word.
Change the I to an E.
Change the I to an E,
okay, help me out here.
the second to last line.
Okay,
On the next page, 1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah, we'll change that.
Thank you for not making me read it.
Yeah.
Fifth paragraph that starts with Kim, I think we just need to remove the apostrophe and strike with.
Coming out, fifth page,
Next page, third page, fifth
thank you.
paragraph. Kim said she echoes her
Right.
fellow commissioners.
Right. Okay,
Next page,
Wait, on that same page at the
Yep.
bottom, I think it says Jill said she has less heartburn with this design that if, I think that
Than.
it should be than, THAN.
okay,
next page, under the matter of consideration for 26457 Huntington, in the first paragraph, third line,
okay.
pre-existing conforming lot, is it conforming or non-conforming?
Non-conforming. Thank you.
Next paragraph, fourth line, middle of that sentence, since this 3'11" garage addition falls into the required yard period, seems like something's missing, I don't know
Setback,
what. Okay,
thank you.
well, it's not a real sentence, not a full sentence,
Right,
or strike since, it'll make it one.
okay.
I think that's all I had.
Anyone have anything else? Thank you very
Oh.
much.
I
Actually.
will have her change
I
those.
do.
Okay.
Okay, Martha?
All right, hang on, I gotta figure out which page it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 pages of the notes, right in the center, under matter of consideration of the proposal by Mark Rizzi.
Okay.
Mr. Rizzi said that the existing I think that should be house, has
Hold
a
on.
20, it's just above the public participation,
Thank you.
and then at the dock should be deck.
Thank you.
And then at the bottom of that page, it has Hank, and then there's nothing there, so I don't know if
Yeah, that
means
was
you were-
supposed to be deleted.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all I found.
Anything else, guys? Okay, I'll entertain a motion. I don't think it's necessary for the person making the motion to identify all those. I think Hanky took good notes.
I have them, and I'll have
Move to
Melissa.
approve as corrected.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. The next item, and the first substantive item for the evening, is a matter of discussion of the proposed zoo site plan review ordinance. So, sir, why don't you reintroduce yourself to us? And Hank, before you do, I think it would be a good idea if you were to, or Amy, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
to give an overview of why we are discussing this again tonight, so we can have context.
Sure. Good evening. Back in 2015, it came to our attention that the site plan ordinance for the city applied to all development modifications, change of use in at the zoo. The planning commission considered a revision to that ordinance that would would require site plan review for any modification, change of use, enlargement, construction, et cetera, in a buffer zone. It's 120 feet from the center line of Huntington Road. Everything outside of that buffer zone that was an animal habitat would not need to go through site plan review process. The idea being that it's far away from Huntington Road and we don't have expertise in how big giraffe exhibit should be, for example. So that recommendation was made to the city commission. They declined to act on it, so the ordinance remains in place that every change modification needs to come before the planning commission for site plan review. And recently you had the giraffe exhibit came, and as you found, it was a long ways from Huntington Road, had no impact on residents in terms of light, noise, vibration, drainage, anything, because it was so far away. So at that time, I believe it was the planning commission that suggested that the city commission re-look at that proposed change to the ordinance. So since that time, we have looked at other ordinances and the way other cities do it. In Toledo, they annually adopt the the zoo's master plan, which outlines their proposed exhibits or changes or modifications. And that way, the city, the planning commission, et cetera, is kept up to date about what modifications, changes are gonna be made to the zoo without having to get into the nitty-gritty details of those modifications for those things that don't impact the residents because they're so far away. So, we have asked the planner to do a proposed ordinance amendment that would, again, set that buffer, 120 feet, just like we had before, so that anything within that buffer that might impact the residents would need to go through the site plan review process. Anything outside the buffer that is animal habitat, and we added some new things, concessions, like a new restaurant or a new concession stand or an office building would not need to go through site plan review process. So again, anything that buffer site plan review, anything outside that buffer that is office, food service, or animal habitat would not go through site plan review. It kind of leaves a catch-all for things that are out of the ordinary that we would want to take a look at. The biodigester was a good example of that, and under this proposed ordinance, that would go through the site plan review process. So, given that proposal, the zoo is here. They have the master plan to kind of walk through, if we did go through this process, what you would receive every year, so that you kind of have an understanding of how they plan things out. And then we can begin the process of discussing that concept. This is only a discussion point at this time. I'm looking for a consensus because it is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, so we'll need to go through a public hearing. But before we set a public hearing, we want to have language, if that's the direction you want to go, that everybody is comfortable with.
Okay.
With that, I'll
Well,
introduce.
before you get up, sir, a couple questions.
Sure.
One, you said that the planning commission chose not to,
City commission?
city commission chose not to accept our recommendation. I recall that recommendation being unanimous some time ago, along the lines of what you suggested, which is we don't want to really engage in site plan approval for things outside that buffer, that 120-foot buffer. And after lots of discussion and lots of presentation, question, was there any substantive reason given for why that recommendation of ours was not accepted? And if so, what was it?
The discussion's not reflected in the minutes. So I will have to go based on my memory, so if you wanna jump in here, help me. I believe that one of our commissioners thought it would be a good, goodwill, PR, if you will, that every time the zoo wanted to make a change, if they came to the city to get approval, then we would be kept abreast of changes and development that were being made within the zoo.
Was there any suggestion on the part of the city commission that our recommendation, if accepted, would somehow jeopardize the health, safety, or welfare of the residents of Huntington Woods?
I don't remember that being a concern of the city commission.
Okay. That's all.
You pretty much covered it. There was a concern about absolutely giving up our rights to review anything going on beyond that buffer.
Because we had the right and why give it up, but was there any explanation as to why giving up that right was in any way harmful or deleterious to the community itself?
Not specifically, but we didn't know what development might go in there, which is why when I brought this back to the city commission after the planning commission
Mhm.
talked about it a couple months ago, and we did a little more talking about it, we thought it would be a good idea if the master plan of the zoo was reviewed.
As
so
a
that you-
compromise.
so that you had a general idea of
Okay.
what was in the plan.
And so, Amy, the purpose of tonight is basically, are we willing to make the same recommendation as before with the, just to contextualize our discussion, with the understanding that we'll see the master plan once a year, but the items outside our purview are gonna include, what were the new
Animal
facilities?
habitat, again, outside the buffer.
Right,
Animal habitat, concessions, I think we
Concession.
call it food service and, office
Okay.
buildings.
Okay, and that's basically what we're being asked to do, just to recommend that if there's a consensus with the, master plan caveat.
Yes.
Okay,
And-
sir?
Yep.
I'm Paul Good, Community and Government Relations person, and I have small versions of this for you all to have. So
Thank you.
we have this discussion.
Jerry Van Acker, the Chief Operating Officer.
Good evening, thank you for joining us.
I've seen this before.
Okay, so what we have here is our master plan layout was updated in January of this year. We hire a professional architectural firm out of Seattle, Jones and Jones, that are experts in zoo layout and exhibit design. And they've been actually working on this for about 20 years, so it's nothing new, but it's a live document that gets updated as things change and funding opportunities come about, or conservation efforts with certain animals come about, and that gets adapted and changed as well. But basically, to the eastern side of the zoo is the main entrance, and then in through here up until, well, just a little bit past Royal Oak. So Huntington Woods, the dividing line goes through just about where the L is in wetlands, okay? And that's the dividing line, Royal Oak and Huntington Woods. What we've designated is the front of the park as the conservation campus. So this would be mostly buildings that would have interior exhibits and buildings that you could visit in the off-season, which the colder months, and come to the front of the zoo and kind of hit these, ultimately will be 7 or 8 buildings, without making the trek into the different eco-regions. So in the back are the eco-regions, would be the Asian, African, forest, African grasslands, the Arctic, Australian, American, and then kid zone and playscape around the fountain area. So that's our, in a nutshell, that's our master plan. We've stuck to it pretty well. Some of the projects that are going on currently, we're looking at and working on, not to site plan approval point yet, but the Amir Tiger exhibit will be getting worked on. Hopefully we'll start that at the end of this year. We're looking to expand the Red Panda exhibit, so that's being worked on now. Currently, the otter exhibit, river otter exhibit, is being expanded, and we went through Royal Oak to do that, which they don't technically have us do a site plan review, but permitting and inspections and all of those things we do with Royal Oak. As Mr. Chairman mentioned earlier, or maybe it was someone else, but the expansion of the giraffe exhibit happened over the past 6 months. We built a building there, and now we're finishing some of the landscaping and the exterior stuff. But that's,
Why don't you,
I mean, the only other thing is, we do have a contract now with Buddy's Pizza, and we're gonna be putting up a Buddy's restaurant, which would be in the, near the membership entrance here by the Ford Education Center. So that's being looked at now and worked on.
was there anything else that was new?
Well, the Wolf exhibit was 2 years ago,
Okay.
but that, it's been around for a bit now. And,
This document has a date of January of 2017, and there is an annual
annual
update.
Yep.
And you can tell just on this alone, there's several items that are still marked in the symbols. There's a legend in the lower left-hand corner. So you see new exhibits or facility, and several of the things like the carousel and the Cotton Family Wetlands are marked as new exhibits, and they are, but they're not new literally this year. So we'll probably have to change that symbol around a little bit. The truth of the matter is there's relatively few new proposed projects on this. And a lot of the kind of work that we do is changing the landscape of the habitat. Often we do that for safety reasons. We did a fair amount of dirt moving around the giraffes just to take a fairly significant slope out of it, because when it gets wet, those animals can go down. And if a 2-ton gorilla or a 2-ton giraffe goes down, that's generally a problem for the giraffe and for us. So we do those kinds of things, and that's kind of what we're doing around otters, and ultimately around tigers is
we
to.
did. And what we're doing too is combining like anteaters. The binturong passed away, so we opened up the wall between anteaters and the binturong and expanded the exhibit. So Detroit Zoo, really our claim to fame is animal welfare. So we feel we do a good job at how we treat the animals. In fact, we're known nationally and internationally for that. And conservation, our conservation efforts. So what we try to do, fewer animals, bigger exhibits, better quality of life for the animal. So, and that we did that with anteaters. We did it with wolverines. We didn't combine them with Spartans, but just expanded their exhibits. So
Okay.
yeah, Paul's right. We're doing a lot of that. Yeah. I mean, ideally, we think what Amy and I think Bob has recommended should work for us, but we're at the pleasure and mercy
Yeah.
of the planning.
Is that your presentation?
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Okay.
And we'll start with the mayor about how you feel about making the recommendation suggested by Amy.
I think it's a good recommendation.
Okay?
I'll take it back to the city commission if that's what the planning commission sees fit to do.
Okay.
We sell it.
Sheldon?
Couple questions. Is the master plan updated annually, because that's what's required, or is it just what you do?
It's just what we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and this is more of a question, are we in a position where we would just review it, so we know what's going on, or would it be a matter of approving or not approving? I'm just curious what our role would be in that.
Let me look at the ordinance language and see. The language as proposed by the planner just says the zoo master plan shall be reviewed annually by the city.
Okay. So, okay, got it, so it's just review. And this leads to the next part, which is, and I'm assuming that I think the 120 feet is still in there? Okay. And if it's one of these identified uses, food service, office, or animal habitat, okay, and it's on the master plan, presumably they wouldn't have to come back to us for any
as long as it's outside of the buffer.
Right.
They still have to come
Permitted.
to see for permits, but they would
Okay.
not have to go to the
Okay,
site plan review.
but, and if it isn't one of those three specified uses, or if it's within the 120 feet, or if it's not on the master plan, they still have to come to us. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's my question. I mean, if we don't have to approve the master plan, and this is a question, I'm not suggesting we necessarily have to, but if we don't have to approve the master plan, if it's just filed with us, whether we like it or we don't like it, then, as long as they're free to do whatever they please, that's on the master plan and is within one of those identified uses and is outside the 120 feet. So we can certainly comment, but they can accept or reject whatever suggestions we might have. So there's no real control factor there for those specified uses in those specific geographical parameters. Is that right?
Yes, the control would be items within the buffer zone, or close to Huntington Road, and items that are not,
Those specified uses?
yes, which,
Yeah, okay.
at this point, I can't think of anything, but 2 years ago, I didn't know what a biodigester was.
That's true.
Okay, all right, but what I'm trying to get at is the review does not imply approval or anything else. We can obviously comment. But they're free to go ahead and do as they please within those limitations,
Yes.
as long as it's on
So
the master plan.
The approval would be for animal habitats and food service areas and office buildings. Those would be the three things that you would be, giving blanket approval to if it's on the master plan.
No, we wouldn't. We would just be reviewing, according to what you told us. Okay, all right. But there's I'm not saying that's wrong. I just want that distinction clear. We don't have veto power on that.
Right,
We have
isn't it,
to
isn't,
comment. We've
We're
got-
not approving, we just.
the only thing that we would ever approve, formally or otherwise, are things within the 120-foot boundary and anything that's not concession, office building, and animal habitat outside.
Okay, got it. I just, so they present it to us, and that's all they have to do.
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right,
Okay.
that was my question. Okay, yeah, I'm satisfied, thank you.
Thank you, Sheldon.
I think an annual review makes sense. I think we just might want to make note if something mid-year in the master plan happens to change, which I'm assuming is highly unlikely, that maybe it just comes back for re-review at that point.
Okay. Martha?
And what time of year did you say you do your master plan?
Typically the first part of the year, for the year,
So we would expect to see it.
first quarter.
I mean, I think the proposed language is somewhat consistent with what we previously approved, and I was okay with it then, so I'm still in there.
I wasn't a fan of the previous proposal, but I wasn't voting at the time. I thought the fact that the city commission decided not to do anything with it would indicate that they wanted us to take some other action. This, to me, just seems like I don't know what this is, right? I'm not sure why we sit here and listen to a review that we have no authority to make any judgment or correction on. It seems to be excessive meetings for the sake of meetings at that point. So I would say if this was gonna go forward, I think it would need to be modified to say who in the city should be reviewed. Right now it just says the city, doesn't call it the planning commission. So I'm not even sure we're even required to see the review. And then secondly, I think it would have to have some approval value, either by requesting a site plan review of a specific instance or signing off that nothing needs to come in for site plan review.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's just the way it was, which the city said.
Yeah.
Which the city commission returned to us.
Okay.
I was part of the the committee that pushed it forward, but given the commission's pushback, I had some of the similar questions to Aaron. And maybe this is directed to you, Bob. Do you think the language, the way that it is now, addresses the commission's concerns in giving up that review process, or does it need to be an actual review and acceptance of the presented master plan? And if so, that language needs to change, and then just some more technical language if we went forward with this, that if the improvements were in compliance and consistent with the zoo master plan as accepted by the commission, as of the most recently reviewed one, because it could change mid-year and they've got a plan. Did we accept it, did we not? So I guess I'm looking to you for some insight on that based on the.
I would think rather than it's the city, it should be the planning commission that reviews it annually. I do think there should be a vote on accepting it
Do you?
by the planning commission.
Okay, because
There's something new is added in here, and you have a question about it at the time you're reviewing the new master plan. That's the time to ask the question before approving it.
That raises first of all, I have not heard anything to suggest that there's any substantive reason, other than the city's not giving up its powers, to reject our prior recommendation. So, to a certain extent, it is a silly season, because there was no reason given, and we're being asked to make another recommendation, and this is, I think, a courtesy and accommodation to address a concern that doesn't appear to be substantive, that was made by one or more city commissioners. So, Aaron, to your point, I think there is something a little bit ambiguous going on. But I think that if we stay true to what animated us a while ago to make our recommendation, there's no reason why we should, as a body, unless we feel differently, based on the merits, change what we said. And I think that this master plan does serve a purpose, even if it's not approved formally, because the zoo is a good neighbor. If we see something that is problematic during our review, I am quite confident that we could bring it to their attention, and correct me if I'm wrong, sirs, the zoo would listen to our concerns, and so we'd have greater awareness of what's going on. So my concern, and so there is a purpose to our reviewing without approving the master plan. My concern is that if we're forced to approve the master plan, we're getting down into the thicket of decision-making that we desired to avoid in the first place, because it doesn't have any impact on the city. So I think that the compromise that is proposed, by asking us to review it, and I agree with the suggestion that it should be expressly stated that it's a planning commission review, does advance the ball. But more importantly, we are restating to the commission our opinion based on decision-making that, was valid at the time, and there are no facts of which we're aware to alter that decision-making. And I'm perfectly comfortable making this accommodation without approval, so long as you give us, your good faith representation that if we see something, you'll discuss it with us. But the whole point is to avoid our having discussions about a giraffe exhibit a mile away from Huntington Road. And I just I don't think it's a wise use of the city's resources to do that. So personally speaking, I'm fine with the language that Amy suggested, with the review language, recognizing that you've given us your good faith opinion that you'll consult and discuss with us, even though we don't have the quote-unquote authority, subject to the change that I would recommend that it expressly state that it's a planning commission review. That's my personal opinion. Otherwise, I think we're going down a sinkhole of getting into the zoo's business when it doesn't affect our interests. That's how I feel. So with that, does anyone,
Should we have any public comment?
Sure. But before we have public comment, Sheldon, I would like to ask, particularly the mayor and Aaron and Kim, whether what I said, and feel free to disagree, obviously. Do you disagree with the substance of what I said? Do you want to take issue with it? Because I do want to drive towards a consensus.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, please.
I don't have issue with what you said, and I think I supported the motion, previously. It was more getting feedback on why that was, no action was taken, and what, are we addressing a concern, is there a valid concern, what is it, and how do we address it, and does this address it? I don't know what that concern
My
is.
sense is that if we make the same recommendation before with the caveat of the master plan review, we will be underscoring our position. And in underscoring our position, the city commission is likely to have to consider it perhaps more than it did before, with maybe political accommodations that were made for reasons having nothing to do with the substance of the matter, being given different weight, if that makes sense.
And
Anyway.
then with some changes in language.
Yes,
in
with the
here,
same
too.
change of language that we've already agreed on are appropriate. Aaron?
Yeah, I only struggle with, when this came up the very first time, there was concern voiced by you about the amount of time the planning commission would spend reviewing things it had relatively little knowledge of or little impact to the city. In that time, I think only one time the zoo has come before us in that year and a half, and so that's been for the giraffe exhibit. So I'm not sure that was a huge risk of us spending a lot of time reviewing zoo stuff. But in this case, what they're asking us now is to review once a year a master plan. I'm not sure that's saving us any time. I think we'll spend as much time as we've had in the last year and a half. Now, granted, they could have a busy season where they do a lot more construction.
My reaction.
So I guess I don't have anything else to add to it than that.
And my reaction to that is not just a question of time, it's a question of expertise. And I'd be loath to get into a situation where this body is making decisions over which it has no expertise, the city has no expertise, and there's no arguable nexus between what the zoo is doing and the quality of our lives here in Huntington Woods. And so it's, yes, a time thing, but it's also, does it help the community for us to be weighing in on matters in these areas? So it's a twin consideration for me.
Sure. I guess I'm just overly cautious. I would not personally want to be living across the street from the Polk Conservatory. And I know that's within the 120 feet bounds, and I know all of that stuff. So we'd have to review it, but I personally wouldn't want to live across the street from it. So I'm just a little cautious
Okay, no,
about handing off.
obviously your views are very, very respected. So, Mayor, any final?
But the planning commission would ultimately,
Right.
if that was in Huntington Woods,
I
have
agree.
the opportunity
Yeah.
to review that project
And
I
approve.
agree.
and approve.
I agree.
Is there anything that I took issue with, Mayor, before we open it up to public comment, that I said that you took issue with?
Are you okay with an acceptance of your annual site plan review? I think the planning commission should review any annual changes in the master plan and accept it.
I mean, acceptance
If you
still,
don't want the approval letter, right?
because my mind is when you accept it, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with it, it kind of, as I was suggesting, defeats the purpose that motivated us to adopt, the position in the first place, which is, why are we getting into these issues? And acceptance, I think, is a deeper investment in those issues than I personally feel like I would want to make.
Acknowledgement,
y-
they're informed.
Yes, how about that as a compromise? An acknowledgement that we're informed.
I don't think I wanna parse the difference between those.
Well, acceptance is we agree with what's in the plan, and that means we're exercising jurisdiction over the
Accept,
plan.
approve, anything other than receive it. I mean, obviously, in terms of receiving it, we would exercise our responsibility in terms of commentary. But I don't wanna get into parsing the difference between accepting, approving, acknowledging, filing, I don't know what all of those mean. If you vote against accepting, acknowledging, or something like that, I don't know where that leaves the zoo, as far as whether they have a plan that they can go forward with.
I think the decision that we have to make, given where the discussion is whether we want to exercise this authority such that if we don't accept or approve it, the zoo can't move forward with its plans, with its master plan. And I think that's just a bridge too far in the exercise of this commission's authority, and that's why I thought it would be helpful for everyone to be advised, for us to review, but without reserving for ourselves the ability to affirmatively approve, which is a legally
Yeah.
binding decision.
I guess I'm concurring with that. Anything other than review, it seems to me, crosses over into uncertainty for the zoo.
Right.
I don't wanna create.
And I was under the impression that if we did review it and we saw something that shot up at us and said, wait a second, this doesn't make sense, or we're concerned about this, you would commit here on the record, in public, on YouTube, to in good faith, enter into discussions with us to address our concerns as good neighbors. Is that correct?
Yes, we would, Mr. Chairman.
So that's where I am. Is there anyone who's got an issue with that as we try and drive towards consensus? Aaron, do you still have a concern with that position?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have a concern. Anyone else? Bob, do you have a concern with that way of phrasing it?
How about if we go along the lines of acceptance of the master plan will not have an adverse impact on the residents of Huntington Woods?
Okay.
So you're accepting
I get it.
responsibility here.
I get it.
That's what the city commission's concern is.
Yeah.
We do not have we don't want you to get into the business of telling the zoo how to build an animal habitat.
Got it.
That's
I think
not-
that's a,
We just wanna make sure that there isn't anything that's gonna have an impact on the community.
I think that's a great suggestion. Okay, acceptance of the plan to the extent the planning commission determines that it does not adversely impact the health, safety, and welfare of Huntington Woods residents.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
I think I know what that means, but I just wanna clarify. So what you're saying is, you're giving us responsibility to say yes, but you're narrowing our scope to being only if it concerns the well-being of the residents of the city.
If we determine through the presentation of the review.
So we
I mean,
have
the
to say
plan.
yes or no, but we only have to consider the well-being of the community, not the well-being of
Of
the
the-
animals or anything else
exactly.
about. I think that sounds like an excellent
So do I.
way to look at it.
So, public participation, anyone have anything to say about this? Because I think, ma'am, do you want to stand up and identify who you are and where you live?
Gloria Seidel, 10454 Talbot. Since part of the zoo's in Royal Oak, how does Royal Oak handle the site review and approval?
They consider the zoo park property, and it goes through no site plan review, none.
Any other comment?
Should I come up or?
And then you
Wherever you want to do.
Aaron Reddish, 25447 Wareham. I've come before you before about this. And I have a couple of concerns with the proposal as laid out. One, I guess first, let me ask a question. How many proposals have come before the zoo in the 2 years since you were given authorization?
A couple. Well, one, and then.
Biodigester and the
biodigester.
Okay. How much time did you spend total?
You know what? We're not going to answer the questions. Why don't you make your
That's-
comments?
that-
Why don't you make your
that's
comments?
fine. I think you get where I'm going
Yeah.
here, is that it's not taking that much time. The change of actually reviewing the site plan, I think might actually take more time and resources of the city. I think the best way is just to leave it as is. You're also avoiding I'm very concerned, this is my second thing, about the good faith agreement. Not that I don't, find the gentlemen here in good faith and very kind men, but it's a law, or it's ordinance, and that shouldn't be dependent on personality. If they go to a different zoo, we get a new director who is not going to act in the same interests of Huntington Woods, we're then put in a pickle, or really the residents of Huntington Woods are. So those are two kind of fundamental concerns. On the language specifically, I'm specifically concerned about excluding concessionary shops or concessionaries outside the buffer. This is actually a good place where we shouldn't give up our rights of rules and regulations. Concessions have been building up in the zoo, which is fine, which is good. My kids are very excited about Buddy's Pizza in the zoo. But it's also, smells, grease, what have you, waft over into Huntington Woods. More and more concessions mean to a chance when the wind is blowing northerly that that's going to hit Huntington Woods. As written now, that it's exempt from our regulation, I don't think that's in our best judgment. If we just leave it as it is now, it will take us, a couple minutes each year to get through, and it won't negatively impact you all, and it'll make the residents of Huntington Woods feel a little bit more secure. There are issues with the zoo. We can go to the city, who we know have power to actually regulate them.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to make a comment? Okay, thank you very much. Public participation is closed. I think we're at a consensus, because you agree with what Bob said. I think that's an elegant solution, which is we're going to accept the proposed language, except we're gonna make sure that it's clear as to the planning commission, and we're going to, the commission will formally approve the master plan presented to us, but only to the extent, our approval will only essentially weigh in on any determination or concern that the plan does not adversely impact the interests of the health, safety, or welfare of Huntington Woods. Otherwise, we're not exercise any approval authority. Did I say that right, Bob? And is that a consensus for all 8 of us tonight?
I agree with that. I think we ought to see the language.
The language.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
totally clear.
Yeah,
Negative.
I agree with that.
Strictly for discussion.
Yeah, this is just for discussion, right?
Protect as opposed
Mr.
to
Chairman,
not.
should you decide that you have a consensus, what would need to be done for the next order of business would be to set a public hearing for next month with this, so that it would come back in the form that was discussed, have the public hearing, and then at that point in time, a recommendation would be made officially by the planning commission to move forward.
Okay. Everyone cool with that? Okay, so, Amy, you've got the general gist of this? Okay, and then we'll wait to see the language. Okay, good. Moving on. The next item is,
Mr. Chairman, you need a formal motion to set for the public hearing for the
oh,
next.
do I?
city
You wanna make
commission
that motion?
meeting. Yeah, the next planning commission meeting.
Anyone?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? It's unanimous. That will be on the agenda, and there will be a
Thank you,
public notice.
Mr. Chair.
The next item that we're gonna be discussing is the matter of accepting the senior housing report for review. And here, let's talk about what the word accept means, because I understand it's got a very narrow definition for tonight.
Yes, you probably have heard me discuss in the past that the senior advisory committee were looking at housing options for aging residents, and they have prepared a report for the city commission. It contains several recommendations, and the city commission would like to move forward studying those recommendations, and they would like to put together a committee with members, 2 members from the senior advisory committee, 2 members from the planning commission, and the mayor will represent the city commission to move this forward and continue studying this initiative. So I don't believe that you were presented with the report from the senior advisory committee, so tonight I'm just presenting it to you. You don't formally have to accept it so much as you have to take it home and read it. It's much probably more onerous than accepting it. And with the idea that I'll be back in July looking for 2 volunteers who will serve on this committee. Although the committee has not, of course, been formed yet, I would expect that you would not meet more than once a month. The meetings would be in the evening, and that's all that I know at this point. But again, familiarize yourself with the report, with the recommendations, and hopefully there'll be 2 individuals that would be interested in continuing to study this.
And so our act of acceptance is to say thank you?
Yes.
Is that what that is? Okay, so,
And you'll take it home as homework.
yes, we will. Thank Thank you,
We
and
accepted it,
and I
so
think it's
we
fair to say as a
reviewed.
body, we accept. Next item is, the matter for consideration of the proposed, addition at 26635 Huntington. And Hank, you wanna give us some background on this?
Yeah, hold on just one second and let me get there. First, I did want to point out that this particular project has come before the planning commission, that we have two of them that are like this evening. It came over a year ago, so and the project was never started, they were never invested in the project, hence the site plan review expired. So they're here with pretty much the same project before you again, because a year has elapsed, and once if you don't start the project, commence the project, you then have to kind of go and you gotta do it again, is basically what it is. So what we're looking at right now is an addition to the Abramovich residence. And basically what you have is pretty much the same thing that you had last time. Your height is 21.25 feet. Your front yard existing and proposed is 40.7. Side yards are 6 foot one side, total 15 are what's required for the lot. And you have 4.9 one side, 9.8 total, which is existing. Your rear yard is proposed. None of this is 63 feet. None of this violates anything. They're not going outside the original footprint of the house. So this is a very, 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 actually it's a small project. And what happens here is that you're looking at an area that hasn't really changed. So there's really not a lot I can say about this. In fact, the write-up that I gave you on it was originally from 2016. So I guess the best way to proceed with this is to let them propose and go over what they have, and then let them make a presentation. Then I'll comment on it and I'll go over the guidelines for that, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Sure. And the first question I think we're all gonna have there been any changes whatsoever since last time?
I will address those, sir. Hello, good evening. My name is Jeffrey Neckel. I am from Studio 515. We are located at 628 East Harrison, Royal. As I said, a year ago, we were commissioned by Mr. and Mrs. Abramovich to put an addition on the rear of their house. Along with this, we will be updating the house with fiber cement siding. And with the addition, we have restructured the back of the house to allow for a level floor between the existing and the new on the second floor. And then we have changed the pitch of the roof at the back. The original design had a very flat roof, and there was concerns by numerous contractors as well as the homeowner about ice dam issues. So we have changed the design to be a 412 pitch roof. That 412 pitch roof does not exceed or poke above the front of the house. As I said, we are going to be re-siding the front and sides of the house, as well as our request is that we will side the new addition. Currently, the gable end of the addition is already sided, so it would just be continuing that same architectural element up to the two-story building. Along with this, we will be re-roofing the home in a similar color. There will be some repairs about trim and things like that, as well as a new garage door and a few other things. So basically, as far as the planning commission, it's the change of the back roof to a gable 412 pitch, as opposed to an initial gable with a shed that was, I think, 1/12 or 1/2/12. So those are the changes to the drawings since last year.
Thank you. Any further comments, Hank?
Yeah, basically what happens is when you get into roof pitches are kind of something that's determined almost by the shingle manufacturers. Basically, shingle manufacturers won't warranty anything against leakage that's under a 312 pitch. So at that point in time, when you have a composite roof system where you have one roof's a shed and you have one roof as a gable and everything is tying in, what happens then is that you have kind of competing issues and flows with that. So you have a 112 or a 512 or 1.512 pitch, which was on the original shed roof, that's virtually flat. So as a result, for what they're doing is they've taken that off, they've widened the gable end with the truss system, and what's happening there is that they're picking up the entire roof, so it'll be more consistent architecturally with what's there now, rather than less consistent with the addition of the shed roof, and you would have two competing roofs. Now everything will be shingled, and because it's a 412 pitch, it falls above the pitch that shingle manufacturers would warranty, so that then becomes a viable option for them, whereas it was not there before last year. The planning commission had approved it last year because it wasn't perhaps the best solution, but it was the solution that was proposed by the architects and the family, and as a result, when they've taken a look at it, they've apparently come back this year with a better mousetrap, so to speak. So other than that, you have basically in the guidelines, I just want to point out that the front cantilever that's on the house exists currently. The elevations, standard DD, all elevations of the main building have the same materials and approximately the same proportions. Originally a brick and sided house was approved as shown. The roof lines do differ from what was previously approved. The house windows are wood, vinyl is proposed on the addition, so that's one thing to consider. Again, you have fixed windows to match existing is somewhat inconsistent because there's no fixed windows in the original house except for the front bay. So you may want to explore that option. It meets pretty much everything. There's really little to no difference other than the air conditioners shown in the side yard. So whether that exists now or not, I don't know, but it's shown in the side yard. If it's to be in the side yard and it doesn't exist, they'll have to get the neighbor's permission for that. And sans that, there really is no other substantive changes from this one to the last year's issue.
Thank you, Hank. We'll open it up initially for public participation, and then we'll have panel discussion. Anyone want to make any comments about this site plan?
I will point out for the record that the neighbor directly behind us did come in and review the plans on Humber, and he is 100% in favor of letting this go through.
Thank you. Public participation open, closed. Okay, Kim.
I don't think I have anything. I honestly don't recall this from last year, because I don't have that
You've
kind
seen
of
it
memory.
since then.
I have them for the night, and then they go away. Make room for more. I guess I'm surprised looking at the back elevation with the small fixed windows, because I don't see those elsewhere in terms of consistency with 360, and would have been surprised that we had at that. So I guess I would like to see something a little larger and more consistent with other windows on the other elevations. Otherwise, fine.
Anything else, Kim? Aaron?
I may be remembering this wrong, but I thought the window shape only mattered for the sides and the front. I thought we needed 360-degree fenestration, but the rear windows didn't need to match.
Unless it's visible from the front, so they do not
Right.
necessarily have to match. The reason that it was pointed out that they were different is because they're different than any other window on the house.
Right.
So that's an informational rather than something where you would specifically tag it for that as being.
Okay, and given that, yes, I don't have an issue with that, thank you.
I don't recall this one from last year either, but I don't have any issues with what we reviewed here.
I would like to see you do a duplicate of the windows you have on the right side on the back of the house there. It just, design-wise, it kind of bothers me. And also, have you thought about using wood windows instead of introducing a new material in the vinyl? Since your existing windows in the front part of the house, you said are wood? Is that correct?
It has to be considered, if it's a contingency on approval, we can talk with the homeowner and the appropriate contractor regarding that.
It's just a 360 fenestration, sort of, it makes sense to me to have the same on the front there. Other than that, I don't have any questions.
comments other than I'd like to see the same type of window, all the way around.
Nothing to add.
I just have a question, why the delay?
The delay, it was a number of things, first of all.
Do we not get too personal, just?
No, timing wise, it was finding a contractor, and it was getting a bid that met their, what their budget was.
Okay,
So that's
so
why,
I'm just making sure that there's nothing about the plan itself that caused the delay.
no, there is not.
Okay.
And, they already have been in discussions since, 2 months ago with a couple contractors, and they've, what about 95% narrowed it down?
No, yeah, we.
Okay, okay, I got no comments, other than I certainly heard what Mike, and Martha, you said. If you wanna include any of that in your motion, feel free. Does anyone wanna make a motion?
Got a question.
Sorry?
And I apologize for not bringing it up before. Do we have to, if this is approved, do we have to, because of the side yard, nonconformity, is this subject to variance?
No.
Or is it just,
No.
okay.
Basically what it says is you can go straight up, straight back.
Okay. And one other question is, are you replacing any of the brick on the existing structure with siding, or just replacing siding or siding?
No, the existing brick is going to remain, and only siding will be poured.
Okay, got it, all right. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, no. Anyone wanna make a motion? Mike or Martha, you had your concern.
Move to approve with, the addition of, I don't know how to put it, the same style windows on the back left, side, back left, as you have on the back right, and wood.
Okay, so before we take that to a vote, are you okay with that?
I do have a question slash concern. That is currently the closet, the walk-in closet, so therefore the clear stories were meant to be above the rod and shelf. My question is do I need to do the double hung that is there, or will a single double hung suffice, or can we keep the clear stories based on that? Basically, our concern is that if there's a window there, it's never gonna be used, it's never gonna be there, because they're gonna be hanging clothes in front of it.
I don't think we're talking about, window size, we're talking about window wood versus vinyl.
No, I
is that
think you were
right?
talking about
I was
size too.
talking about
Oh, I'm
size,
sorry.
but
Yeah.
I personally agree with Aaron, that in the back of the house, I'm not sure I'm that concerned about, but I was concerned about the wood more so.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, just so that everybody's on the same page for this, when you look at standard DD, item number 3, the sash, the style, stash, color, and proportions of new windows match the existing windows on the original building, unless the new windows are not visible from the street.
Right.
So that's the one codicil. Having said that, we also have a 360-degree, which is kind of competing with that, so to speak. But the reality of this is that those windows are not available from the street, and the gentleman who lives directly behind did come in and say that he doesn't, for the record, I'll put the name on it because he absolutely didn't care, Gordon Glidden, who lives right behind them.
Gordon Glidden, we know the man.
Yes, you do know him, said that he had no problem with this.
So I guess the question is, you weren't comfortable with increasing the size, but you were comfortable with making it wood?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes, okay. So does that affect what motion you do or do not wanna make, Martha?
no, we don't usually accommodate what goes on the inside of
Yeah.
the house for the exterior.
But you're also doing a
Partitions the back of the house, but I don't think that we've ever bent on that.
Right, but I think that Hank's pointing out that,
The only one who can see it right now who lives there, but that doesn't mean somebody else won't.
but doesn't the regulation actually directly address this, even though there is that competing 360, so we're not running afoul of the regulations? But whatever, I mean, it's your motion, if you wanna,
I can,
whatever you wanna do.
I can take my motion back.
You wanna do that?
Somebody else wants to make another.
Anyone wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion to.
Well, so you're withdrawing your motion, and you had a second?
Did we have a second?
No.
No, just a motion,
Okay.
okay.
Still discussing.
So I guess I would make a motion to approve as presented in regards to window size, location, with the change to make them all wood to match the existing.
Okay.
Is that-
Does anyone have a second for that one?
I second that.
Okay. Any discussion, guys? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. Okay, I don't have Okay, the next item for consideration tonight is, Talbot, 12708 Talbot.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Paul Hidmark. I'm here for Home Renewal Systems. We're building out of Farmington Hills. I think as you described it in the last one, this was an expired.
Right, exactly.
We propose no changes to the home whatsoever from the original approved, site plan approval. We have, I believe we've added the new garage. The original plan may not have shown that. The plot plan, the site plan did show the garage and the proposed garage is in the exact same location. Similar exterior materials.
Hank, is that it, sir?
Yeah, pretty straightforward, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, again, just to reiterate, this project originally came before you in 2015, and for a myriad of reasons, never came to fruition. The plans, if you take a look at it, they meet all the criteria necessary for this. I did include the minutes from the last meeting for this, so that there was no, there was no controversy as far as what was had with it. They're under the maximum height. Their front yard setback as proposed was, I had 28.3, but it's the distance next to, what's actually required is the average of the distance of the houses on either side of it, which was where the 28.3 came in. So that was okay. The side yard was 6.5 one side, 15.5 total, so they're fine on the side yards. The rear yard, they're more than ample. They're under the maximum lot coverage, and they're also under the maximum house size. Nothing has changed. This is the exact same plan that came before the Planning Commission in 2015. Some of you won't remember it because you weren't here, but this is exactly what it was. Site plan approval is given for a 1-year period. That's part of the ordinance. If it goes over the ordinance without being built or without being vested starting the project, then what happens is that it has to come back for the Planning Commission for them to review again. So this is why the project is here before you. If you take a look at it architecturally, what you're looking at here is a plan for a Tudor revival. You can see that you're using stucco and half timber, as well as, brick corbel details and brick. So the materials are very consistent with the Tudor revival. And what you're looking at is a house that is under the 26-foot height, so they managed to get some of those features in fact, a lot of those features in, without going over the height, so they don't require any additional side yard step-ins. You'll also note that there's a separate plan for a garage there. So, basically, this is pretty simple. If you have any questions on that, I'm sure the representative from Home Renewal and myself would be happy to answer them. But the only thing that I wanted to verify is that when they're calling out stucco on the plan, that we call that as true stucco, so it's not stucco board. So having said that, that's the only difference, because stucco board is specifically not prohibited in our ordinance, is not allowed in the ordinance, it's prohibited, so it's true stucco, not stucco board. The plan does call for stucco and doesn't say stucco board, but I just wanted to be clear on that.
Okay. Public participation, anyone would like to make a comment? Okay, public participation's closed, and we'll start with the mayor.
Looks like a good plan to me, and I'm happy with what's presented.
Thank you.
I am generally too. I just want a verification on the record that the representative is clear that it is stucco, not stucco.
Oh, yeah, it's
Okay.
the good old fashioned plaster and
Okay, I
trowel.
just don't want surprise.
Yeah, oh, no.
That's all, because everybody gets upset when somebody gets nervous. In the garage is now part of the plan?
Yeah, it's on the garage is on your site plan.
Okay.
Drawn, and there's an extra.
Yeah, there was extra sheets that were dropped
All right,
off.
and I also noted there was some engineering from Noel. You're on board with that?
Yep, yep.
Okay, I have no further questions.
Same exterior materials on the garage?
Yes.
The house?
Yep.
No issues, I think it's good.
Margaret?
I'm good with this, I wanna say thank you, because your garage is so beautiful too. In keeping with the design of the house, you have more detail on your garage than we often see come across
Well,
in
I have
houses.
Italian family, we like to live in the garage, so, I think in terms of garage.
It's the bricklaying and the kind of keep the Italians are so good at, yes.
I actually remember this one from a few years ago, and I was fine with it then, and I still am.
Aaron?
No issue with it. Looks like a lovely home.
I agree, I liked the plans before, I appreciate the addition of the garage to match.
Good, thank you, I have no comment. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item for consideration is the house on Hendry, 8685. Hendry?
So we purchased it, oh, sorry, Sam Kaplan, now it's my wife Sarah. We moved over from Royal Oak not too long ago and purchased it, and a lot of work had been done by the previous seller on the interior of it, and we really loved it. But one of the big things with it that we want to change long-term is the livability for a grown family. So the previous seller, to our understanding, sacrificed the fourth bedroom and originally full second bathroom for a closet and master bathroom. So now it's only a 3-bedroom, two and a half bath house. We want to open it up, modernize it a little bit, and really have it be a long-term forever type home. So we're not talking about adding significant square footage, but really just utilizing the kind of the unique original shape and layout, but still keeping with the original historic Tudor style of it, and making it almost how it should have been made.
Anything else?
On the first floor, probably need space for the new bedroom above it because we're expanding the kitchen into the garage. We're hoping to expand the kitchen.
She does specialize in older.
That it? Architect wanna say anything?
No, it was their goal to match materials, to keep the integrity of the home as much as possible, and the garage extension maintains that lower roof line you see from the street to still have it curved people. And the additional bedroom that we're getting is in these lines, like the original garage. Otherwise, from the street, it really should, look like it's original too, because of its L shape, you don't see the inside
Right.
elevation except for the back neighbor.
And we did, the neighbor that lives across Lincoln from us, the Furman family, did send us an email, saying that they reviewed and approved it.
Thank you.
And there's, I think, there's one other change you'll see on the plans of adding in the existing master bedroom, which would increase, cause right now we have one master closet, but we'd add a second for kind of a his and hers closet area, so.
Thank you. Hank?
Thank you. A couple things that I do wanna point out here, before I get to cause there's one area that we have to talk about, which is the garage. They're well under the maximum height for the additions. The front yard, there's really no change, it's existing. The side yards haven't changed, the rear yards haven't changed. And the bump out the breakfast nook is in a spot where you couldn't see it even necessarily from the back. It's just because the house is in an irregular configuration. They are way under their lot coverage. It's a huge lot, and they are well under their maximum house size as permitted. So when you talk of the house, these are really modest additions in the scheme of things. One problem that they do have is that if you take a look at the site plan that's prepared from Noack and Kraus, it shows 16 feet from the front door of the proposed garage to the property line. That has to be 18 feet. And the reason for that is that if you have another car there and it's less than 18 feet, then they're entitled to an on-street parking permit. So as a result, that has to be slid back so it's 18 feet, or they have to have a variance for that in order for that to be there. So, when I had conversations with Mr. Kaplanoff before, we did discuss that, and, they indicated that they would be willing to slip that back. It's like, well, actually 1.9 feet. But it does have to go back because our ordinance reads that you have to have 18 feet clear from the garage door to the property line in order to park a vehicle outside, so it wouldn't be building in an automatic on-street parking place.
So sorry for being fools here, they just shift it back, or what?
Yeah. That's
What's
basically-
this 15.5 feet, is that the existing garage?
Yeah, what's there is there, so that's not the issue, they're not changing that.
So you're gonna have staggered garage?
They're gonna have staggered, they've got a stagger on it right now. So if you take a look at where it is now, and you take a look at the first page, which is the architectural site plan, they're showing 15.5 is what's existing, they're proposing 16.1. That proposed actually has to be 18 feet, or they have to seek a variance for it. But when the reason for the ordinance, the background behind the reason for the ordinance is that we allow for garages that don't have a clear 18 feet space to be eligible for a parking place on the street, which they would pay an annual fee and they could park on the street. The problem that they have with that is that at this point in time, it would be self-created because they can build that to be 18 feet and not have to have that at all. The likelihood of a variance at the zoning board of appeals would not appear to be very good.
So we are gonna see it 18 feet back, not the 16 that's shown.
So any motion therefore would be based on the assumption that it's 18 feet?
Yeah, that should be part of the motion. Now, architecturally, that won't really affect much except for some of the lines and some of the interior roof lines. But it shouldn't really affect that much on the exterior, whereas it would be different where you would have to see a different elevation.
Okay, anything else, Hank?
No, but I would defer to the architect on that, if she wanted to comment on that.
Do you?
Yeah, so we were made aware of it, and I've taken a quick look, and, we can pull that back to be at the 18 feet, and, if you were to approve, we would submit the drawing showing that, and the Novak and Kraus site plan would confirm that. We are planning on having the roof line run continuous across there, so it will all look like garage, and we won't get a bump in the roof line, so it'll just be a overhang and let the car park in there.
So you'll have probably, on the setback new garage, you'll have, say, a 3 foot
2.5 feet.
overhang.
Okay, anything else, folks, before I open up for public participation? Any public participation on this site plan application? Okay, public participation is closed. Discuss with Mark this time.
This house is near and dear to my heart. I grew up in this area and I used to ride up over the hill and look at that house all the time and see the little balcony that was in there. And I actually had a friend who lived in an apartment that was over the garage. Anyway, so it looks like, you know, your additions make sense. I have a quick question about the south side elevation. I think this is the dormer that you're bumping out in order to have some more closet space. And I'm wondering if you would consider to put, a window in there, because it looks kind of blank in comparison to everything else you have across the back. And that kind of goes along with our 360 fenestration again. Bugaboo.
I know we had talked about it, it's not out of the question, but I know the point of it is to utilize as much storage space as possible. And actually, our neighbor two doors south.
Has the same
Yeah.
dormer addition with the.
Right, so that's kind of where we saw it and inspiration for it.
So, I also, and I don't know if this is even possible, on the side there as well, your rear west elevation where the dormer comes out. That would be another opportunity for a window, I think. However, I don't know how large that really is. Sometimes it's hard to see on the plans.
I think with the roof line coming down, I
it's
think
a little too tight.
trying to get a window in there might look a little bit like a mistake, because it's, you know, it's just a part wall, and the main line that we love about this house is coming through there.
Right.
So I think, you know, on the front and the rear, it would look, forced.
All right, well, I had to ask, and my only other question was with regard to, that dormer in the front view. So how far back is the dormer actually gonna be from the front facade? How, is it like the full, it's coming up behind it, or is it, 'cause
Yes, it's back in, I better tell you my own walls, I think over your shoulder.
We'll let you.
On the floor plan.
Also, would you mind stating your name? for
I
the
will.
record,
Glenda
please?
Meads with Glenda Meads Architects. My offices are in Birmingham, Michigan, and I do a lot of Tudor houses, some West Frost, and love this style of house, so I was thrilled when they hired me. It's set back a good 2 feet from both the front and the rear, so, you know, it's centered on the south and it's in.
It's not on the same plan.
Right, yeah.
Okay,
It's
that's,
on the same facade, but not the same plan.
sometimes it's hard to
So
tell.
that roof line that comes down, you'll see 2 feet of that roof line
Okay.
before that wall comes up.
Alright, so I was just concerned about the massing, because if it were just coming straight up on
I
that front
agree.
facade, it really would change the dynamic
We
of
had
that.
this conversation.
Okay, that's the only other thing that I really was concerned about. All right, I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. David?
I would agree with Martha to adding some fenestration, if you guys were agreeable. Otherwise, no comments.
I was pleasantly surprised to see how much you left the backyard in place. My wife and I looked at the house, that's just an oasis back there.
Yeah.
You're really lucky, I hope you enjoy it. I have no issue with the house, except I do agree with Martha's comment regarding a single window probably makes sense with that closet pump out.
On the south side are you talking about, not the front and back side?
It would be south facing from the master bedroom, the south facing closet.
South facing of the dormer, not
Yes.
the front and back of the dormer.
Yeah, I don't know that you really have space
Yeah,
there.
that's what it is.
I think there's a window, actually near that balcony that you like so much, there's a window in that balcony that would sort of be the right proportion if you're willing to give up the hanging space or work around.
Either in addition to or in lieu of, fenestration is the common theme. There appears to be an opportunity as well in some of the addition areas that are in brick to add some windows. That there's some pretty decent expanses on the lower level, on the
Our plan
south side
is-
elevations.
Our plan is, we currently have a window in our garage that we wanna reuse as many windows as possible, cause most of them are still original to the house, so, especially in that garage, we're gonna push it out another bay, but still use that existing
There's
exterior.
the window, I think that's drawn, there's a window drawn, is there one window drawn there?
Mhm.
In the garage?
One, but it looks like
To the
existing to me.
west. So pop
Is that
that.
Yeah,
center.
it would be,
Using the same window?
That's the back of the garage.
The south wall is
Yeah.
really in their
Side
backyard,
of the
I mean, with our
garage?
thoughts, that would be landscaping and
This would be the
whatnot.
side.
Oh, that's the
No
one
sees it.
relocated window on the side.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the south side's elevations, if I'm reading that correctly,
so-
where there's
The back wall
the,
of the
the
garage.
addition of the brick, you're
Yeah.
doubling the size of the brick there, but not adding any
And the
fenestration.
garage and the,
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
plan
Under
would-
the second floor addition.
right.
yeah, so looking into the backyard, that back wall, our plan would be, I don't know if it's gonna be a pergola yet or some kind of landscaping, cause we have a lot of ivy
Something you're
currently, so
intending to
yeah.
bring
exactly.
off of that wall.
Mhm.
And what about on the other, this is addition two, right? Am I reading that
Yeah, but
right?
it's the same
It's the
elevation.
same- you
Okay,
get
it
two
says, okay,
views.
that's what I'm
It's like a-
confused,
yeah, it's like a-
I've been trying to look at it and I'm like, I'm not
Yeah.
following this, I'm really not, okay, so it's the same, it's the same part.
It's, the issues are on the west and the south.
So I guess my comment to that would be, we've had some of this discussion before, of people saying, well, I'll put landscaping there to break up that wall. It's not a permanent structure, it's not part of the plan of the house, it's nothing, so you might be well intended to do that, but if you don't get to that for 10 years, then you still got a big blank brick wall. And that's my concern with it, that I think there's an opportunity there, and there's adding, I can't tell if it's double or not by what I'm looking at, but adding a substantial amount of brick there on that lower level that I think deserves a window.
Anything else?
Oh, sorry. I would echo, I think, everybody on the dormer on the south side elevation. I'd love to see 3 windows there, but I don't think that's realistic, so 1 would be great. Nice to have light in the closet too, I think. I agree with everybody about the garage fenestration. The south side, I see what you're saying, that doesn't concern me as much because that would be deck, patios, things like that, but the west, could use another one the same size, maybe 2. Just because that's gonna have more exposure from, I lost my orientation, but what road is here?
Lincoln.
Okay, that's great to see that.
There is privacy fencing there also,
Yeah,
I
there
don't know
is,
if that
okay.
matters, but yeah, there is
Mhm.
privacy fencing.
Okay, so, that's all.
Sheldon?
Concur with all the comments that have been made by the members of the commission.
Mayor?
No further comments.
Yeah, I agree, and I do think the south side elevation and the west side elevation both need fenestration. Sorry, I understand what you're trying to do, but that is a big expanse, on the lower floor. I think the, bump out needs definitely one. I think you need at least 1, possibly 2 on the south side, and certainly 1 on the west elevation. I don't know how to design it, at this point, but it really is an expanse, and if I were to go for it as is, it would be inconsistent with the standard we apply universally, or uniformly. So, I guess I leave it to, you guys and folks who know how to design better than I do, what are we looking for? How many windows do you think we need?
Mr. Chairman, if perhaps, and I could certainly, the architect could certainly speak to this, but I think what you're looking at is on the garage rear west elevation, what I'm hearing you say is that you'd rather them split the window into 2 and have 1 equal distance symmetrical from that, so add 1 window on the garage rear elevation, as well as on the south side elevation, where the stucco is shown in the center section, where it's shown as stucco half timber, to add a window consistent with the size of the windows that are on that side. So if you're adding those 2 windows, you've taken care of the closet elevation for the bump out with that, with a window that's consistent in size with a single unit, not the mulled units, but a single unit there. And that would fit nicely in the stucco half timbering. And also, they could take advantage of an opportunity here for the garage on the west elevation. So the plan would basically have the addition of 2 windows, should that be.
But what about, south side elevation where all the brick is?
Well, that was.
Down below,
That was
down
gonna be
below.
a deck or a patio.
And it's really inside.
Why- tell me why
there,
that
but that's
doesn't-
up to
You can't see that from the road.
No one can see
That's the
Still,
On that point, I mean, it's tough to describe, understandably, but it's one of the more private yards in all Huntington Woods, cause it's set down, and the previous owner excavated the whole thing and put up all privacy fence. So you can't see it from any point on either Hendry or
Okay.
Lincoln,
if
but
everyone agrees with that, I'll agree. Is everyone, that this is a unique situation, relatively unique, so we don't have to worry about that expanse? I mean,
The house itself is shaped
Right.
like a V,
Yeah.
so you're talking about the
V.
interior of the V. It's not even a pal, it's a V.
I agree with exactly what.
see, I'm having spatial relations problems.
Come over.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, when you take a look at this, and this is actually truly a house, it is designed like a V, and it has a, interior space which is really private,
And
because
that's what we're
there's
talking
no
about
way
here,
you
here?
can stand in the backyard and you won't see a lot of that
Right.
elevation.
This would be the south
Even if
side.
you were standing in the backyard, because of the configuration of the house on the lot and the design of the house.
Okay, so if, Hank, sorry to be obtuse here, if we go to the front, the front of the, application, and I was concerned about how the, south side elevation, is, on the bottom floor. Where on this are we looking? On the front page?
On the front page?
Yeah,
Oh.
This is the
It's
one.
right
okay.
there.
Yeah, on the site plan, what we're looking at
This is
is,
the south elevation.
Okay.
That's not.
well, you
Okay,
can
this,
certainly
this,
speak to
okay,
that. if
okay,
you'd
I
like.
got it,
You got
I
it?
get it,
Okay.
Right on the
okay, I'm fine with
inside.
that,
Okay.
so that makes sense, so,
It's a very unique it's a very unique configuration of
Okay.
house.
so,
Even if there wasn't a fence, you still couldn't see it.
got
Right,
it,
exactly.
so we're cool. So, Hank, do you wanna repeat what, recommendations I think you were making in terms of how we can formulate a motion?
Well, I'll reiterate what I had said, and then, of course, it's up to them.
Right.
They need to
Right.
say, if you take a look at one window consistent with the size of a single window on the second floor elevation, on the south side elevation, to be placed in the bump out with the positive in the center. So pleasure of the
Yep.
cap
Are you
on
guys
the
okay with that? Okay,
Yeah, no, like the garage.
yep, anyone wanna make a motion? That's clear to me.
I'll make a motion to accept as Hank is presented.
Okay, that's, so that's, that's one window consistent with the sides and the bump out in the center,
That's
and then
correct.
in the garage rear level on the west, you're gonna split the one window into two and you're gonna spread them.
With the addition of
What?
the garage back.
And moving, oh, and
With the
also we have to
addition of
move the
moving the
garage
garage
back
back
to
2 feet.
16,
1.9 feet.
1.9 feet, okay? That's the motion, I wanna make it.
I second it.
I can't make it, can I?
I just made it.
Oh, did you make it? Okay. So you got a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. That was a very confusing layout for me.
Not the cleanest
What?
one ever.
Yeah. But I didn't get it.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre.
What? Okay, the next matter on the agenda is the matter of consideration of the addition on Hart. You wanna go first? This has got some-
Mr. Chairman, at this point in time, help me out here, 'cause Devin okay, that's where I was going, I just wanted to make sure, has presented has brought in a PowerPoint presentation that he'd like to show the planning commission. And during his presentation, then I'll reserve comment until
Cool.
afterwards.
I don't mind just speaking to it too.
No, that's fine, you
Okay.
can certainly go ahead, I just wanted to know.
Yep. my name is Dave Damian. I'm the owner of the house on 13126 Hart Avenue. My wife told me to throw a picture of our kids. So this is our kids and this is our house. And just a little background, we moved to Huntington Woods in 2014. This is my son Jack and my daughter Emery. So just a little bit of an overview of what we're trying to do. It's pretty straightforward dormer addition. Some of the challenges we have with the existing space, this is a screenshot of and the current bathroom that we have upstairs. So, kind of a quick overview of the plan. So, we're looking to really not change anything in the front of the yard with the exception of adding a new roof, be a three-dimensional shingle roof, and create some consistency in the siding materials that we have. Currently, it's kind of a mix of aluminum siding and vinyl siding on the existing dormer addition that you see on this one here. And then within the space itself, we're looking to update the master bedroom. It's currently wood paneled and a drop-in ceiling, create a more usable master closet and master bath, and add some additional space for that dedicated home office. As far as site survey notes, this is just, I guess, a few of the notes. We aren't changing really any of the footprint of the house, so the shed dormer just leverages the existing footprint, doesn't increase the height of the house, and shouldn't interfere with any existing vehicle or pedestrian traffic. So, some of the notes from the site plan. Any questions? That's it.
That it, sir?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Hank, you wanna take it from here?
Thank you. Okay, basically what we have is, we have a typical Huntington Woods bungalow that needs to get some space. So I mean, typically what you see with these are the pop-up backs, which is kind of what you have here. The roof line in the rear will go to 312 pitch, which again goes to the materials being able to be used. You can't shingle that, so the material on the roof would be consistent. The questions that you have that you run into on this particular project is the material being siding all the way around for the proposed addition. What's proposed is a vinyl siding, which is a shake type of siding. It is a shake pattern, it's not actually a shake siding, and it is a vinyl product. And the windows that are proposed are vinyl wall side windows, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is what's in the rest of the house at this point in time. So that's what's in the house currently. So when you take a look at this, they're well under the maximum house size. They're well under their lot coverage. You're not expanding the footprint. They need no variances for this particular project. And the house, even though it'll be larger than the houses on either side of it, is well within the size range that's allowed by the city of Huntington Woods. Hold on, just let me check and make sure that I've got that. Again, the vinyl siding. Other than that, and if you take a look at it, portions of the west elevation may lack fenestration. The west elevation on the top floor shows the elevation going back, and the windows stop pretty much in the center. The rear elevation, or the north elevation for that house rather, has windows balanced on the addition. Those windows purport to be egress, so that those windows would need egress on that. And if you take a look at the east elevation and the west elevation, I think what caught my eye when looking over the fenestration issue is on the east elevation you have a window towards the rear, which does meet egress. On the west elevation you don't have that, so you have the larger expansive siding. Other than that, I have nothing to add. I'm sure that between the two of us we'd be available to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Hank. Anyone wishing to say anything about this site plan application from public? Okay, closed. Let's begin.
Thank you. A couple of questions for you. Why did you choose vinyl for the shape?
It was really just we like the shake style, and both my parents and my wife's parents have done very similar siding with their homes that we liked. So that's the reason behind it.
I like the shake. I don't like the fact that it's vinyl. I can see the aversion to wood, but I think Ken can back me up when I say there's some really nice hardy products out there, cement board. So that's one recommendation I'd make. The window, if I'm looking at the south elevation, which is the front of the house, the window, the rectangle window at the peak, is that existing?
It is.
It is, okay. If we look at the west elevation, second story, I think you definitely need another window or two up there. Right kind of in the area where new addition 7-inch vinyl shake siding, that arrow is, somewhere in that area, that's a pretty big expanse of shake there, I think. East elevation, I think I'm okay with the upstairs, but to the right of, is that the garage door? That side door. To the right of that, I mean, I could even live with the same window that we have to the left.
In there, on the rear side of that closet, at least it appears to be on the plan. So I don't know that you're doing any, in terms of use, you've already accepted a window there, and I don't think you're gonna do yourself any damages by putting another window on that west elevation to the rear. I don't think that's a garage door.
Is it the side door?
Yeah, that's a side door.
Yeah, it's a side door to the house. And they're not, I mean, I'd like a window there, but that's not really part of the addition.
Yeah.
I think
That's part of the existing kitchen, if I'm not.
Yeah,
mistaken.
our
They're
kitchen
building
is there,
up
we're not
now,
changing
building
anything on the lower level of the
They're popping up
Oh, I'm
the second
sorry.
floor.
I was
okay,
thinking the whole thing was
It's,
bumping
it's,
up.
it's
Fair enough.
actually, Michael, it's one of those type of things
Yeah.
where when they built it, yeah, they probably should have balanced it out and put a
Got it.
window in there, but he's not addressing it in his renovation.
No, fair enough,
plans for
I
this
was
house.
kinda thinking we were pushing the whole
Okay.
thing back.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I guess that's, you've heard a second version of you need another window and question about the materials. I would not be in favor of vinyl shade siding. That's my 2 cents. That's, other than that, I mean, it's a pretty conventional bump out on a, for addition to a bungalow. And, other than that, I have no issues.
Thank you.
I will agree with the hardy board alternative and additional window on the second floor of the west elevation.
Thank you. Ken?
Yeah, same concerns on the materials for the siding and, need an addition of a window on it. Aaron?
Yeah, same thing on the siding. I don't know, there's probably a couple different solutions to that west elevation that would be okay with me, but right now there's a long expanse at the moment.
What do you?
I'm not gonna try and design it.
Okay.
I'll just say ditto. Agree with everything.
Okay.
I agree, west elevation, I'm looking for at least one window, possibly two, or have them spaced out better. What material is on the side of your house presently on your bungalow that,
It's
All the way up
on the side of the house, it's aluminum siding, and then the 2 existing dormers that are on the house right now are vinyl siding.
so you never had brick that went all the way up to originally? Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Unless it's hidden behind that aluminum siding, but I don't think so.
Cause I was gonna say, if there was brick there, I would encourage you to use brick, but, I agree with everyone else, I think vinyl is a bad idea in terms of health for your kids. I mean, it outgasses, and they have such good response to the cement board. You know, I would highly recommend you look at that as an alternative, and, other than that, I don't have anything else to say. It's nice that you're figuring out a way to do this within a footprint, and, your family having a space.
Thank you. I would agree, so I just wanna make sure if there's a motion, we're asking for, hardy material for the shake. And, what's the consensus, if there is one, before we see whether it's okay with you, about having 1 or 2 windows on the, west elevation? We think it's, what do people think? 1 or 2 would be appropriate for that elevation?
I think it depends on sizing, if they're consistent with this, looks like those are those the same size? The two that are there now?
The two, I believe, are 36-inch.
They're both the same now?
Yeah.
They're 2 feet 5 inches wide, they're 2-foot windows.
So I would say
How many
if
would you
they're that
30-inch
size,
windows. Recognizable cementous fiber board. So, rather than that, I would suggest that any motion that would be forthcoming that would include that would be a cement fiber board, rather than specifically specifying a James Hardy product, because there's a lot of products on the market that are the same thing, only different.
Okay.
And they also carry wide variety of colors, prices, and chains which, the resident may wish to explore.
Okay. So, anyone wanna make that motion?
I move to approve with the addition of a window on the second floor west elevation and a change in
That's comparable to
that's comparable to the east second floor elevation, and a switch from vinyl to a cement fiber product for your exterior. Is that good?
Yeah, I think so.
Specify that as cement fiber shake product,
It would have to be, right, given the fact that that's what.
just to be
right?
clear.
He's showing the shade.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
just wanna be sure.
Okay.
It's the same boards,
Yeah.
they just make them in a shape pattern, it's the same.
Anyone wanna second that motion? Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Do we have some?
Aye.
Yeah.
All those opposed? Thank you.
Thanks.
Really? Okay, the last matter is, the matter of a definition change to section 40-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically what I'd like to do is I do have a PowerPoint that I'd like to show you that kind of illustrates exactly what we have going on here. And, I need to do this to you again. Okay. So basically what we're looking at is a problem. I'm gonna get into what the problem is and the reasons behind it and what seems to be logical solutions. I will tell you that I have reviewed this with the city attorney, and the city attorney does agree and she can understand where the problem comes from. But again, this is a discussion to get your feedback on it. If it's the consensus that you would like to move forward with some form of language like that, we would finesse it and bring it back for the next month for the appropriate public hearing. So this is a discussion, so what we're looking for is feedback. Basically what we have is there's been several questions as to the proper interpretation of the rear yard as it applies to, for example, air conditioning condenser units as well as generators. Currently, they're allowed in the rear yard only behind the rearmost portion of the structure. And that's gonna come into play, it's important, as we move on, you'll see this. So currently, in our height and area regulations, what we have is air conditioners and power generators, refrigeration or cooling equipment, or power generators installed outside of a dwelling shall be located in the back of the rearmost portion of the dwelling or main building. So what happens as a result of that? And I'm gonna skip here and go back, let me go up forward here and do this. So here's the rear yard issues. When you take a look at a house, and again, this is an aerial view of a bunch of houses, one of which I know intimately. But basically what happens here is that there's no houses that have completely flat backs. So as a result, when you have a house like this, you typically have a very small area here. So to put an air conditioner and a generator right back here, because this, which is a similar addition in this house here, has the same issue. An air conditioner, this person that owns this house got this person's permission to put the air conditioner in the side yard, so it's not an issue here, but should that have not been granted, I or the person who lives here would have had to put the air conditioning unit right back here, okay? So I have this tremendous alcove right here, and that has a patio for years and all that, so that's being used differently. So the problem that you have is that I have two rears, and most of these houses have two rears to the house. You have this plane and this plane. Both planes are the back of the house, but in reality, as far as this particular definition goes, I could only avail myself, or whoever wants on this whole block could only avail themselves of the limited amount of space that they have here. So what happens as a result of that? You end up with variances going to the Zoning Board of Appeals because this area here, this area here, this area here, and that area there is technically side yard, because that which does not fall within the rearmost portion of it, that's a rear yard. This is a side yard, so as a result, people can't put air conditioners, generators, new patios or work as a result of that needs a variance because that's not considered the rear of the house, it's considered the side of the house. So, here, let me go back a bit here for a second. So, the definition is that it extends the full width of the lot between the rear lot line and the nearest point of the main building, okay? So when we go here, again, that's the nearest point to the rear lot line is the red arrow, leaving the yellow arrow to kind of fend for itself with what becomes a no man's land here as far as what can be used. So what we propose, or what we're proposing here, is that simply in the rear yard, where we have the term nearest point, we insert rear facade contour or similar language to simply point out that the back of the house is the back of the house, no matter which plane it's on. It's on the rear elevation, so the rear elevation contour, so what's the contour? The contour are the lines of the house, would then determine what the rear yard is. So you have most of these houses here, and I'm showing this right here, again, because it's easy for me to pick on this house, because I know it intimately, but other than that, you pick any other block in the city, and I'll pick another one. That's a different block. This is off of Elgin. There's nobody that's got flat on the back of their houses, so as a result, you're limiting what people can do based on that. This particular house here has a handicap ramp that comes out of a sliding glass door on the back and comes around to the driveway, and that's how the handicapped people get in and out of the house. The problem with that is that if they needed a power generator, which they do, this particular house right here, this alcove is the only solution for that, because otherwise they would still need a variance to put it on the other side of the handicap ramp. So really what we're asking for is something to make sense. And part of the support for this is, when you take a look here, we did the same thing with fences. And if you take a look and you remember what we did was, they provided the fence or wall shall be no further forward than the rear corner of the house that is adjacent to the side yard where the fence or wall will be located. Well, we recognize that there's different planes, and if you were to do it with a fence, you could effectively fence out a good portion of the yard, which is actually in the back, or fence out the access door if it happened to be on the side, so that their rear door wouldn't even be in their backyard, it would be in a side yard. So with the fence definition, they've taken a look at that and they've altered it for that. So the other thing that comes up is that in addition, in the zoning ordinance rewrite, language is being included that fences will be okay to the mid part of the side of the home, which would put anything in that particular area in the backyard, in the functional backyard, and they'd be behind the fences that would go on there. In addition, most of the cases of this nature had a placement which is on the side of a porch, and an addition was installed, or porches were converted to full-time additions. So as a result, what you have is that the air conditioner hasn't moved, but it's gone from legal to legal non-conforming because an addition's been put there. So there's a myriad of problems with this. What we were trying to do is trying to establish some consistency here and take a look at what we could do with this. And the houses here, and just say, look, most of the houses are the way, the ordinance is written for the minority of the houses, not the majority of the houses. So this gives us an opportunity to correct that, eliminate some of the burden on the zoning board of appeals for people wanting to put things in here, which really is the back of their house. And if you want, what I'd like to do is get some feedback, have a discussion, see what your general thoughts are with that. Take some public input if there is any, and see if there's any way that we can perhaps wordsmith the language to come back to you next month with an actual change or with an actual amendment to that. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that you might have. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Public participation on this one? Anything?
Just a real quick question. So if, in our current scenario, if the air conditioner is really now non-conforming, but that's where it is, if you go to replace it, then you have to do the conforming?
If you're just replacing the unit with the same thing, same size, you'd be allowed to swap it out. If you're changing the size or changing the location on the side, then you would have to go get a variance for it.
I mean, I agree with you, most of the houses, they're not straight across the back.
Right,
And it's-
And as a result of that, you know, the zoning board of appeals has seen a few of those, and they're going to see them more and more as people start building additions, but they're stepped in because one of the requirements is we like to see them step in, particularly if there's a change in materials, and then that's where the nook where the air conditioner goes in most cases, and as a result, you know, you now have a legal non-conforming situation. And then if people put the addition on a crawl space or a slab, you can't move the line set, so you'd have to figure something else. The line set would have to go through the wall for the condenser unit, so, or same thing with gas through wall for a power generator. So if, I'm sorry, any other?
Does anyone have any questions for Hank about this issue or comments? Sheldon?
Yeah, two things, or maybe two things. One is that to the extent you put it in what you're calling the alcove, the interior, the
Yeah.
L provision, you still have possibly some impact on the adjoining neighbor. Second, because this is what came up at the last meeting, and the adjoining neighbor did have some comment about that. Second, you're still talking about a situation where the generator of the AC has to be within, what is it, 3 feet of the rear? However
It
you
has to be
define the
within
rear.
3 feet, so.
And set in 5
From the
feet
corner,
from the
which
corner.
right, which makes a lot of the placement impossible or impractical.
Are you suggesting a variation to that or an amendment to that as well?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right. I question the analogy, perhaps it's helpful in terms of definitionally for fences, but fences don't make noise. And I don't know that the analogy, or that, I don't feel any necessity of consistency between fences and generators and AC units. To me, that's not a valid argument. I don't see a requirement to be consistent with those couple things. Anyway, that's my comment.
Any other comments?
I really like Hank's suggestion of a rear contour of house, is that, I think that,
It kind of allows the back to be the back.
yeah, that, so if you end up U-shaped or L-shaped or whatever that ends up being, you know, the rear of the house is the rear of the house, I think that makes the most sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure why noise is a concern if you're keeping the rear contour and you're still keeping 5 foot from the edge. You're not really changing the noise risk of this.
It depends on the neighbors. Some neighbors like to sleep with their windows open, and if their next door neighbor's air conditioner is blowing along all night long, that can be a problem.
But
Because you're not changing
Yeah.
that fact at all.
Right, that's all.
It's still in the back of the house, still 5 feet from the corner. You're not increasing or decreasing the noise risk as far as I can tell.
You still
Am I
have a
wrong?
66 decibel rating is the maximum that it could be, whether it's in the front,
If
rear
you're in
side, or front.
The alcove, though, you're closer to your next door neighbor than if you are farther back. You run a better chance of being away from where their windows are, where they might be.
Well, let's
Because
ask
you're
it,
farther forward on the lot?
yeah, so that she's saying that the house is more likely to be near if you're
If
closer to
you're
the
in
front.
alcove closer to the front than you are.
But
Like for my house,
That's assuming that the
bump out,
front
I
of
have a family room and
that's
behind.
assuming that the neighbor's house doesn't go any further back
Right,
than that. So I mean, in most
suppose it
cases,
depends on.
Can we reverse engineer this a little bit?
okay.
Why did the folks who wrote the regs in the beginning say that it has to be toward the rearmost, I mean beyond the rearmost portion of the back? What was the rationale for that?
At the point in time when that was written, the ordinance contemplated additions that were either full width to the back of the house and didn't contemplate additions that were half
Really?
of the thing. Yeah, no, I know this well because I had this discussion when it was proposed. But the issue became is that not everybody adds onto their house the same way. And just because the back of your house right now is perfectly flat doesn't mean that it isn't or won't end up with it. So realistically, if you have a 3-season porch on the back of your house, which you want to enclose and turn into a 4-season den for whatever reason, then your air conditioner that was always been on there has to go to the back if you replace it with a bigger air conditioner to take that heating and cooling burden. It just was one of those things where originally when it was written, probably made some sense. However, based on the amount of additions and what the construction actually is, and I went through aerial views of pretty much every street in Huntington Woods, and I couldn't find a house with a flat back. The problem that I showed you, and I used an example of the house where they do have a back, and it's one of the L shapes with an alcove, and they have a handicap ramp, they just plain can't put it there.
Leaving aside Martha's concern about the noise, has there been any stated objection to your contour plan?
No, the last month at the last ZBA meeting, the concern was that the appellant originally wanted on the other side of the house. A natural fit for these is like where the electrical panels or gas service goes, whether it's a generator or an air conditioner. You still have to have a line set, so you need electrical or you need gas. And those alcoves typically are the best places to put it. If the additions that are in the back, or if it's a porch that was converted, it's sitting on a solid foundation and you can't get from point A to point B with a line set or electrical for an air conditioning unit, so it tends to run on the outside of the house, which is more visible and less desirable. As far as the noise goes, even if it was an alcove, you're still 5 feet in from the side for your placement of your unit. Your unit is still the same 66 decibels. What it does is it allows the person that owns the house the opportunity to have some flexibility with placement, and it takes the neighbor out of the position of acting as a de facto zoning board of appeals by granting or not granting the permission. So in other words, if you have a neighbor that's more congenial, yeah, sure, put it there. If you have a neighbor that's less congenial, then they might have a problem with the placement of that. So as a result, there's no measure of consistency with how it's applied, because basically the side locations are technically governed by the neighbor, not by the planning commission, the zoning board of appeals, because that particular area becomes a no man's land. It's technically a side yard the way the ordinance is written now. So what basically we're asking for is if the planning commission would entertain a form of this coming back to you with verbiage and written by the city attorney so that you could understand what the issue was. Well, my goal tonight was to have some discussion, get some opinions, and to take that back and then come forward should the planning commission entertain it. If they don't, if it's your pleasure not to entertain it and it's everybody saying, no, leave it the way that it is, we're still going to keep having all these appeals go to the zoning board of appeals.
Does anyone object to Hank putting this on the agenda for next month, having a notice and drafting up some language for consideration?
I do have a question. I don't,
Yeah.
we're not talking about redefining rear yard except with respect to these
That's
those
correct.
two particular uses.
As it applies to those particular uses.
Okay, so we're not making a general variation to the definition
Well,
of rear yard, because I wouldn't wanna do that
Well, wait a
without
minute.
exploring the
You
the
are,
consequences.
only from the standpoint that the same reason, like if you have one of those alcoves, and I can put it back up if you wanna see it, but if they don't have a rear door and they have a side door that goes out, and they wanna have the side door, which is a sliding glass door, which goes out to a patio, then that patio is technically an accessory structure in a side yard. And they would need a variance for it. So what I am asking for is for the planning commission to consider the definition of rear yard, and then the rest of it will take care of itself.
Okay, I for one would want a little more information about the implication of redefining a rear yard before I jumped into it. My second question had to do with that other issue about the delegation of the ZBA, delegation of ZBA authority to the neighbor, and whether or not that is whether or not the city attorney considers that vulnerability to
Yes,
the decisions that are made that way.
yes,
They're made by someone other than the ZBA.
that is correct.
I think we have some public comment, but I'm gonna exercise my grand imperial power and reopen public participation.
Thanks.
So,
I just had a question as to, if you redefine the rear yard, are you redefining the side yard? Does that stay with the, I don't even know how that's defined currently, but does that impact side yard definition?
No, because if you redefine the rear yard, it's still the point, this definition of side yard is that point which goes from between the rear yard to the front yard. So when you redefine rear yard, it just automatically changes the side yard, because the rear yard's the rear yard and the front yard's the front yard.
But the side yard near that alcove gets more space then, if you redefine the rear yard.
No, the rear yard gets more space, the side yard would get less space.
Right, okay, I got you.
okay, so is there a consensus that this is something that's appropriate for, the next agenda, with public notice and some language drafted up to address the whole issue, including Sean's
And
concern?
again, I would, not to discount what Sheldon has brought up, I would have the city attorney address his concerns.
And will the city attorney be here next month?
Either the city attorney would be here, or there would be a memo that would
I always think it's bad just to have a memo,
I can't guarantee that the city
but
attorney.
would
will
you at
do
least
that.
make the request, because
certainly will.
memos do not answer questions,
I certainly will.
they create questions. So that's what we're gonna do for next month, everyone's cool with that, that's a recommendation. So last, item is public participation on any other open issues, anyone? Then I'll have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a good month, everyone.